Well, good Tuesday. I'm meteorologist James Hopkins from Tampa, joined by Southwick in Jacksonville, and we're talking about the potential for some tropical development as we go throughout the next 7 days. So the latest update from the National Hurricane Center has showed a little bit of an increase, just still a low chance for the potential for tropical development. And if you've been following this, you know this has kind of shifted a little bit. And maybe you're looking at more of a potential of off the East Coast as we go throughout the weekend and into early next week. Again, this is something we're watching, and the reason why the National Hurricane Center is still giving this a low potential is we don't have very good model agreement on if or when anything's really going to develop. What we're going to have is a front that comes into the area. But Lee, we're looking at a little bit more maybe of Jacksonville area as we go through the weekend into early next week.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I would say with the model runs that we've had recently, a little bit better news for you all in Tampa, and two here in Jacksonville, not super concerning. As we've talked about, it's a low chance. Yes, as of the 8 a.m. advisory, we got bumped up to that 30% chance of formation as opposed to the 20% chance of formation, but it's still a low chance of formation. And I think I can say the same for you. When for us here in Jacksonville, whether anything forms or not, our impacts are the same. We are expecting rain, and a good amount of rain, especially Wednesday and Thursday, and then Friday with the 4th of July. At least here in Jacksonville, we really got to watch where that frontal boundary sets up. It could bring you a lot of rain, and it could leave us dry.
Yeah, exactly, because depending on where this low develops and the circulation of the low, this low develops in the Gulf, we get that counterclockwise circulation that brings all that moisture up into our area. You get that area of low pressure that develops off the coast of Jacksonville or maybe off the coast of Georgia. That counterclockwise circulation going to bring in some drier airs that really can impact the forecast, especially as we head into the weekend. So let's start with this. First off, what's going to happen is we are going to have a cold front that's going to be moving its way into the area. And watch what happens as we go throughout Wednesday and then into Thursday. It's going to be stalling Thursday night into Friday morning. Again, where this stalls does have a big impact on where the rain is. It's going to be pushing a lot of rain out ahead of it. So what we're looking at as of right now is the biggest impact, at least the most widespread rain for the area, is going to be Thursday ahead of that. Now, where that front stalls looks to be across the Jacksonville area, maybe all the way out towards New Orleans. And it could be hanging out there as we go throughout the day Friday, and then Saturday maybe creep its way to the south. This is where the forecast models are kind of get a little divergent, is how long this front hangs out and then what happens with it after. Now, this one right here is the European model, shows as we go Saturday into Sunday, the front kind of dissipating into a trough, which is basically an elongated area of low pressure. And then moving forward from there is what we're really keeping an eye on. And this is where we're going to see the potential for that rainfall maybe decreasing as we go into the weekend. Lee?
That would be the best scenario, right? Of course, everyone watching this closely, always watching the tropics closely here in Florida, but with the 4th of July holiday weekend coming up, everyone really wanting to know. So that would be the best case scenario if we get that drier air that moves in and we get to dry out a bit. But I know that you have some rainfall totals that you were looking at. So do you want to get to that too? I'm very curious to see what these new models show us for possible rainfall totals across the state.
Yeah, these have kind of been wavering back and forth with these rainfall models. So what we're looking at right here, first off, is the model comparison. We keep talking about the two models we use the most are the GFS and the European models. National Hurricane Center has their own model, but what we're watching is for that closure of that contour there. So look as we go into early Friday morning. Look where we have two, both the GFS and the Euro off the coast, basically right there in the Big Bend, but look off the coast of the Carolinas. This is where we talk about model agreement. So again, these have been all over the place. Yesterday's GFS had it right around Mobile, moving its way towards Texas. The European model didn't have anything really. And then as we move this on forward, really not showing much at all really for the weekend for a low developing. And there we go Sunday evening and then into Monday, there is the low off the coast of the Carolinas. So again, that is where we're really going to see a difference in what's going on into next week. So excessive rainfall outlook, and we're looking at this really starting up tomorrow because this is when that front is going to pick up and start moving. Now we only have a marginal risk for excessive rainfall. That is a very low 5% chance of flash flooding occurring anywhere within a 25-mile radius of what you see shaded here in green. Now we go to Thursday. Jacksonville still looking pretty good, but look, as you see, from the Big Bend through the Nature Coast, down through the Bay into Sarasota and over towards Orlando, we're looking at a little higher percentage. And again, this is what we were talking about earlier. We're still looking at the best potential for that widespread rain to be on Thursday. Then we go into Friday. Look at that. So what they're thinking is we're going to get this low potentially developing off that east coast. That would bring the drier air into Jacksonville and push all that moisture further down to the south. Now here's your rainfall forecast for the next 5 days. Weather Prediction Center has, again, looking like, let's go up to Jacksonville area. And this is what we're looking at over the course of the next 5 days. 1.5 inches, maybe 2 isolated. This is definitely better news for you, Lee.
It is. Now, one thing I do want to press our First Coast viewers, though, is that we've had flooding, flash flooding, even over the past couple of days, just with our daily thunderstorm setup. And so we've already had a very saturated ground leading to more of that flooding. So although there's good news for us that it looks like we could be perhaps drying out on Friday, fingers crossed with that for the 4th of July plans, where we do see these thunderstorms develop, we could still have that flooding risk because our grounds are so saturated, so they won't be able to absorb that water. So not saying we're in the clear, but yes, at least it looks like we could, if this system moves south, we could get some of that drier air, and that would be much better news for us. But I do want to press home to the First Coast. We still are concerned about flooding because we've seen the flooding already. Our grounds are so saturated, and so each individual thunderstorm that develops has produced a lot of heavy rain, and they've been slow moving, so we're going to have to watch out for maybe some water collection in those low-lying areas.
Yeah, and it's the same here because we dealt with really drought conditions as we went throughout the spring. We start up the rainy season, and this is typical for Florida, where you'll get a thunderstorm that can dump quite a bit of rain. Yesterday alone, we had one in the morning on the Nature Coast, 2.5 to 3.5 inches of rain, and that was with one storm. So we could still see that potential as we head into tomorrow again, especially Thursday, and even when things break up for Friday. We might look at some lower widespread rain chances, but we're not going to look at lower rain chances for these isolated. So what it will do is just break up a little bit. Let's zoom in and let's take a look again. Nature Coast through Tampa down towards Port Charlotte, where you're getting increased numbers. And again, this is just what the latest model run has done. This is still contingent on what happens with that low. Again, if and where and when that low develops. So what you're going to see here is, now this is again through 5 days. This goes through Saturday, and this shows the potential of about 3 to 4 inches in the Tampa area. So that's what we're looking at again, where you're going to see that pushing its way down towards the south, potentially. That's what the model runs are suggesting now with that low developing, bringing that drier air into the Jacksonville area. That's where we're seeing that push down, unfortunately, into the Tampa and down to South Florida area. So let's go back and talk about the tropics, because again, this is the time of year. This is our formation zone. In the Gulf, up that southeast coast is where you typically see these lows forming. And look at these water temperatures. 80 degrees is really the threshold. And you look up the coast. Yesterday, right off the coast of Jacksonville, that was in the mid-70s. And you're at 80 right now, all the way up off the Outer Banks of North Carolina. You're in the mid-80s.
So unfortunately, you know, these waters, as you're pointing out, they're warm enough to produce that tropical formation. So right now we do have only a low chance of formation, but the environmental conditions are there. The waters are warm enough to spin something up. It's not unheard of when you get that frontal boundary, that's a mechanism that we can start to see tropical formation spin along. So maybe a tropical depression, it's possible. That's why we have this area highlighted, but it's a low chance. But what we're showing you is that although it is a low chance and we don't want anyone to panic, the environmental conditions are there. the water temperatures, they are conducive for that tropical formation.
So what we have typically when an area of low pressure forms along a stalled frontal boundary, it is a cold core low. And we talk about this all the time. That's the difference between a mid-latitude cyclone, basically a low, wintertime low, or any low at any time of year. What happens is when that sits over this warm water, it could become tropical or subtropical, and that is the reason why we have that interest. Look off the coast of Tampa, water temperature 87 degrees right off the coast here. So that's what we're looking at. If that low does develop along that stalled front, we could see it warming up. We could see it turning tropical. We could see it turning subtropical. And again, we keep talking about the potential for development. That does not change the impacts. That doesn't change the focus of our forecast, which is wet weather, because we're not really looking at, even if it is tropical depression, we're not looking at windy forecasts. We're just still looking at the potential for rain and where that rain is. And your wind shear, you'll get a little bit of wind shear, and that could help hinder maybe a little bit of development. A lot more in the Gulf than what we're seeing up the East Coast. So again, we do have that little potential for the East Coast. And one other thing I'd like to point before we get out of here is we do have some dust around the area. Now, it is going to lighten up just a little bit. We got another plume coming as we go through the weekend into next week. That looks like it's going to be staying in the south and then western portions of the Gulf. But anytime we get that, it does dry out the mid-levels just a little bit, which could, again, even though it could hinder development, it will potentially help with some of these rainfall numbers as well. Because while we still have drought conditions, it's 1 to 2 inches per hour rainfall rates. That's what we're looking at the potential again. Why we're going to have these weather impact alert days as we head towards the holiday weekend. And really, unfortunately, looks like Thursday's the big travel day. That's going to be the day where we see the widespread rain.
Yeah, I mean, same here up into southeast Georgia, those areas that we cover. And of course, too, if you have any interest along the coastal Carolinas, this is something to watch to see if that low pressure system forms off the Carolina coast. But for us here across the state of Florida and in southeast Georgia, if you have holiday weekend plans, if you're traveling, that's so true about Thursday. Unfortunately, it looks like one of our days with the most widespread rain, Tampa and Jacksonville. And then for Friday, I will let you guys know too that here along the first coast, we do have a weather impact alert issued for Friday as well. Although, as I have shared with you, we have that uncertainty if we could get some drier air, which would be great. But because it's a day that everyone is outside, we have continued to issue that weather impact alert to watch it closely. And of course, we here in Jacksonville and Tampa will bring you all the latest updates on that.
Yeah, continue to watch that. Again, Thursday still looks pretty certain on the heavy rain, but again, it's that Friday. And again, that's the best news. Thursday, unfortunately, being that big travel day, it's going to be wet. Just plan on taking some extra time. You know the areas that flood with that poor drainage. Be careful for that. But it's Friday. When we get into Friday evening and going into the overnight for those fireworks shows, keep an eye on those because they typically wait as long as they can to make those decisions. But of course, we'll keep the team coverage as we go throughout the next couple days all the way into the weekend. So don't forget to join us here.